Okay, hello guys. In this video, mainly we are going to look at the Wipro NLTH or Wipro coding questions. So let's get started without wasting time. Make sure that you watch this video completely because there's a big surprise for you at the very end of the video. Also, the coding questions that we are going to cover, I personally believe that there's a 50% chance that exactly these coding questions may come in your exam based upon what we've seen in the past, right? So let's begin with the video. So earlier, what used to happen is Wipro used to ask a lot of pattern program, like you had to print 1 and then 2 star, 3, 4, 5 stars, 6 stars, so on and so forth, etc. Maybe your college would have also told you, okay, that these kind of programs are coming. Yes, these type of program used to come heavily earlier, but this year, what we've seen that the chance of getting these questions have reduced, and in fact, there's only very less chance. That is 15% chance, I will say, that the pattern programs are asked. There's 50% chance that you will get one question based upon string. That is very sure. There would be 2 questions that would be asked to you. So one of the question is, I think one of the question definitely is going to be on strings. The other question, it may come on matrices and or arrays. And arrays are also similarly, type of strings. So there may be a program that would be a mix of both array and strings as well, right? Excuse me. So let's begin. So these are the programs that we've collected from a good amount of students that have given Wipro exam, and those are the students that have told us, okay, these were the programs that were asked by them. So the program that was one of the most important program is GCD of 2 numbers, which is very important. Then there is GCD of 3 numbers, and there was one more, that is GCD of array of numbers. So all of these questions we have posted on our Wipro coding page. The link to that you can find in the description below, and all of these questions you will be able to find here. In this video, we are going to cover the most important questions out of these and others as well, right? So one question is going to be easy and one question is going to be difficult. So based upon that, you have to decide. One program was if a number is prime or not, print all the distinct elements in an array, sort the first half in ascending order, sort the second half in descending, matrix multiplication, and finding transport. So these are 2 separate questions here. Remove all the vowels from a string and then print the string again. Check balance of parentheses. Print sum of all odd numbers present in the larger numbers. Numbers of word in a particular sentence. So they'll give you a particular string and they will ask you what are the number of words in that. You count the number of words. Number of times a particular word is repeated in sentences, transpose of a matrix, 2D row, maximum element. So these are the programs. Apart from that, there are more important programs that we have posted on our Wipro coding page on Prepinsta website. Again, the link is mentioned in the description below, so make sure that you follow that. Most importantly, before starting this video, we are running a program wherein the top 5 comments will get the Wipro online classes from Prepinsta free of cost. So make sure that you give the best comments. I personally will be choosing comments. So, it could be anything. It could be maybe a better program of one of these programs or one of the programs that I'm going to cover in the video. It could be a question, a very good question, a very good doubt that you may be asking about Wipro NLTH, or maybe anything related to Prepinsta, how it helped you, etc, etc. So 5 people are going to get online classes for free, and we are going to select the best comments, and I personally am going to select for this particular video. So let's go ahead, right? So let's take the first question here. So the first question is basically what I purposely took, because this is one of the most important question and one of the questions that could be asked in your exam, that you're required to count the number of words in a sentence. So for example, this is Prepinsta video. So this you have to take as an input, and then, or maybe this you have to take an input from the compiler, and then finally print 4 as an answer, because obviously there are 4 words, 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, the second one would be test case 2 Prepinsta video, but there is a very specific thing. So if you go online and find the code of counting number of words in a sentence, it will not. One of the students did that. It did not work. It did not, all the 6 test cases that are provided in the compiler were not complete, because if there is a space in the starting, that code is ignoring that code that is there on various websites like Geeks for Geeks, etc., etc. That code is not 100% correct. It ignored that particular word and then it only printed 1 as an answer. Then again, the same thing, if there's multiple spaces at the very end or multiple spaces Prepinsta is the most visited website for, there's a space here, and what if there was one more space here, right? In that case, it ignored that and it only printed 7 as the answer. So all the test cases were not passing. The code that I'm going to cover in this video will take care of all of that definitely, right? So one more very important thing that I would like to highlight in here is there is problem in the Wipro compiler, and a lot of libraries do not work. It also happened in TCS NQT, and a lot of people who did not join our online classes, their code did not run because they were missing a few things that the compiler has problems, and we told all of that in our online classes. So I personally decided, okay, let's give it to everyone for Wipro. It should not be that if someone has written perfect code, their code is not running because of compiler issue. So the compiler issue that is there in Wipro in the string base is it is not able to read gets at all, right? Or different kind of string operations in Python also, right? So at least in C, this is how you would read a particular string without gets, right? So you cannot write %s. I hope that all of you would know that because it only counts one string. So if you write this is Prepinsta, it will only take this. It will ignore the other part. So which is why we use gets, because if there are multiple strings there, right? So first, what we are going to do is first we are going to take the input. So first we are assigning a character of length a of 100. That is basically a character string or character array. Then we are initializing I is equals to 0. So that is basically, we will see to iterate the loop, and then count will store the number of words count in this video. And then we are asking enter the string, and then using this particular scenario, we will also going to post the whole comment in the Prepinsta Wipro coding questions page, so you can find the whole code there. But it is very important to understand how the code works. So that is what I'm going to focus in this video. So yes, there is percentage, and then there is this apostrophe, and then \n, and then percentage above it, percentage before it, and then s. So basically, this is what you have to write to read a string instead of gets in Wipro compiler, right? So first you take the input. The next step would be we have to find out a way. So for example, so let's say if you write Prepinsta, right, and this is the word, and there could be a possibility that it is not this, it is a space is in the starting of the sentence itself, and then we write Prepinsta, right, as the first input. So what we are doing is first we are counting the first word whenever it starts. So let's say if a of I, that is basically this position, a of 0 here and a of 0 here. So these are two different cases. So what we are saying is if a of 0 is a blank space, that is if this is it, in that case keep the count 0. How else, basically in this case it is not, it is basically for this is happening, keep the count 0. For else, the first word is starting. So for the whole Prepinsta word, we have already declared the count to be 1. So let me explain it again. If there is underscore, and then if we write Prepinsta, the code that is given on various website, this is a redundancy to remove that particular thing. If a of 0, that is a of 0 is a blank space, in that case do not start reading the word. This is not a word. Keep the count 0. So in this case, it will ignore it. And then we will see the further part of the code. So just for now, remember that, okay, this has to be written if in case the first word of the, or the first, character of the string itself is a blank space, right? So this will take care of that. Okay, so let's move ahead to the next one. So this is how we are iterating on the loop. So let's say if the string that you have gotten is this is Prepinsta, right? So we will use a while loop, and we will say, so let's say this is Prepinsta, right? Now we have to iterate upon this loop. So a lot of people can do strlen, but this is not the correct way. What you can do is any particular string ends with \0. So what we are doing is we are saying run this while loop until and unless you encounter \0. So you know this condition will be used for running the loop to iterate upon the whole string altogether, right? So that is what we are doing here. Okay, so let's move ahead to the next one. Okay, so guys, let's start with this particular code. So I'll explain it with an example here. So what it is saying, Prepinsta is best website, right? So one good thing that I have done here is that I have given two spaces, space. So I have also written the same thing here. So Prepinsta space is, then there are two spaces here because to handle all the condition and to pass all the 6 test cases, this code is foolproof code, right? Best and then space website, right? So let's move ahead. So what this particular code is saying, if a of 0, that is basically currently we are at the 0th position, that is p. If a of 0 is equals to blank space, put count is equals to 0. So this is not happening here, right? So it will go to else because obviously the answer is p, it is not blank space. Had there been a space in the starting, in that case, we would have, put the count 0 and then while loop would have iterated it correctly. Okay, so what basically it is doing, it goes to while loop. What while loop is doing, as I explained in the previous slide, it is taking you, it is iterating you till the end of the string, till we encounter \0 at the very end. Any particular string ends with \0, basic property of C, right? So what it is doing now, while a of, so it basically goes to the p, first p. Now it says already the count is 1, right? Because initially it went to the else loop and then it completed till here. Now it is going to while to iterate upon the whole string. Now what it basically is saying, if a of I, that is initially the I is 0, is equal to space, which is not true, right? Then do count is equals to count plus 1, right? Obviously the count will not increase as of now because already we have counted 1 here. Now let's go, what will it do? It will not implement this if, it will go to I plus plus here, right? Now then again at the next, that is 1, a of I is equals to 1, so it goes to R. Now again, obviously this is not the second word, right? So we are not supposed to increase the count, we are supposed to keep the count 1 already because the whole word Prepinsta is taken as 1 count. So till a, the count should be kept as 1. So again, if a of I is equals to blank space, increase count is equals to 1, obviously it's not blank space, the value here is R, right? So it will keep on doing the same thing till a, right? It will keep on increasing I plus plus and count will remain 1 itself. Now what happens, we reach here, that is we reach this space here. Now what it is basically saying, if a of I is equals to blank space, obviously correct, now this condition is satisfied. Now what it is saying, a of I plus 1 is not equal to one more blank space. Now a of I plus 1 is this particular thing, that is I. Obviously it is not equal to a blank space because the value is I here, right? So obviously this condition is satisfied. Now what it is saying, a of I plus 1 is not equal to \0. Obviously I, the value is I, it is not \0, the loop is not ending, right? So this condition is also satisfied. So what it is basically saying is that yes, increase count is equals to count plus 1, correct? So what, at this particular space, we have particularly said, okay, the next word is going to be encountered in the next step. Let's increase the count already, right? So what now happens is, now we are at I, right? Now a of I is equals to blank space. Obviously it is not true because the value is I, right? So count does not get increased. Then again, the same thing happens till for S also, right? Same thing. Obviously till now the count is 2. Right, now we reach this space here. Okay, now what it says, a of I is equals to blank space. Obviously it's a space here, so this condition is satisfied. Now a of I plus 1 is equals to blank space. Yes, so this condition is also, the a of I is not equal to blank space. Now then a of I plus 1 is this, correct? Now this condition is not satisfied because this is equal to blank space. This condition is saying, this should not be equal to blank space. Now this is basically this loop, this condition is not satisfied. We go to the next step and increase the count as I plus 1. Now finally we reach this thing here, this space here, right? Now a of I is equals to blank space. Yes, this condition is satisfied. A of I plus 1 is not equal to blank space. This is equal to B, right? So obviously this condition is also satisfied, right? Then finally this last condition, A of I plus 1, which is B, correct? It is not equal to backslash 0. So obviously this condition is satisfied. So before even reaching B, already before we have increased the count. So this is very smart algorithm that we've written. So before even reaching B, before even iterating to B, we have checked, okay, the count will increase to 3, right? Now again the same thing will happen till BEST. Then finally same thing will happen here at space. Finally, let's say, okay, we reach space here. So A of I is equals to blank space. This condition is satisfied. Then we reach W. A of I plus 1 is obviously W. Now it says that it is not equal to blank space. Yes, this condition is satisfied. Then A of I plus 1 is not, this condition is satisfied because it's not equal to backslash 0, it's 0. So now we again increase the count. Now count is basically 4, right? So now what would happen is, it has increased till E, it will remain constant, right? Now at E, what will happen here? Now obviously at E, this backslash 0 is encountered. Obviously now the loop will end, or A of I is not equal to, obviously there's no space also, right? So the initial or the final count value will remain as 4. So the most important part here was this particular thing, right? This particular code was able to handle situation as if there are multiple spaces. It would even handle if there is 3 spaces written. This particular condition is able to handle this particular area, right? Or if in case somebody manually writes backslash 0 and puts it there, right? This particular code is able to understand if there is space at the starting. So for the students who had written code, who had learned the code from Geeks for Geeks and various other websites, only 4 of the test cases were passing. This particular test case was not passing. Initially, if starting of the string is also a space, this was not passing, right? So let me do one thing. I'll run this particular code for you, and I think this is mentioned. Yes. So this is the code here. And I've also already posted the code. The link is given in the description below. So let's run the code at least once, right? So enter the string this, then is, then spaces, prep insta, and then website. So I've given 2 spaces between is and prep insta, right? So the answer is 4. So it has considered. So let me again run this code and give multiple spaces, space, and then let me write prep insta, right? The answer here is 1. It has ignored all of these. So all the test cases are passing with this particular code. So make sure that you follow it correctly, right? So let's go to the next question, or the next question itself, right? So the next question is basically a little easier than this one. If you've not understood the previous code, just make sure that you watch the video again. You will understand it. It's a very difficult code, especially if you are from ECE, EEE mechanical. It is going to be very difficult for you, but which is why I have taken that code, because that's difficult and I care for your success. Okay. So what basically this particular code is saying, you have to take a string as an input, and then you have to take another target string as another input, and you have to find the number of time target string is repeated in the string itself. So let me tell you an example. So the first string that you have to take as an input from the user, let's say the user enters prep insta is the website. Okay, so this is the input string, right? Now the second is target string, right? So that target string is entered as website. Now you have to tell how many times this website string is repeated in this input string. So obviously 2 times, right? So this is what we are going to cover in this particular question next. Okay, so let's start with this particular question here. So what we are doing here is initially we are initializing that first string, that is str100, wherein we are taking the string as the input. And then second, we are initializing the string that we have to search. And then this is basically used for counting the number of time we have found that particular target string in the main string. And then I and j are to iterate upon the loops that we'll further be using. Found is to identify if we found it or not. And then finally, string len and search len is basically to find the length of the input string and the target string, right? Again, as I told you, the gets function does not work in Wipro compiler, so we are using scanf. Here we are asking them to enter the input string, and here we are asking them to enter the target string. And then finally, using the strlen function, we are storing this in the length of the target link and the search and the main link main string in string len and search len. Then initially we are keeping the count value as 0. Right. So here we are basically initializing and finding the basic things to start with the program. So let's start with this code. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to take this as an example, this string as an example, and explain you the code. So this is important to understand the code. The whole code you will find in the link that I've mentioned in the description, right? So initially what we are doing, there are two for loops. The first for loop will be used to iterate upon, on this target link. And then the second for loop we will use to iterate upon, to check upon if this is inside, this is found here. So let's not waste time. Let's run it here. So strlen for this is 20, right? I already know about it. And strlen is 2 because the length of this whole thing is 20 and the length of this is 2, right? So what we are doing, we are running on this loop. Initially we say, okay, we have found it. So found value is 1, and then using this whole code that we have written here, we are assigning found is equals to 0 based upon some condition. So obviously, if the found value remains to be 1, in that case it's found. If the found value is getting 0, in that case it's not found. So just telling you that initially we are saying, okay, we have found it, right? So now what we are doing is we are assigning j is equals to 0, right? And then running it till strlen, that is 2, right? So what happens is, this is the condition. So first, initially I value is equals to 0. Now the loop starts, we initialize found is equals to 1. Now we come inside this loop, we also have j is equals to 0 here. Now what happen is, what it is saying, if str of I plus j, that is str of 0 plus 0 is not equal to to search of j. To search of j is 0, right? So basically str of 0 is p, right? And to search of 0 is I, right? Obviously this condition is not satisfied because this is I. So what will happen? It will go inside this loop. It will say, okay, I am not found, and then you will break. So this for loop will completely break. This will not iterate to j plus plus, and then we will go back to this for loop again, right? So obviously it will also go to found is equals to 1, and count plus plus will not get increased because found value we redeclared as 0 here, right? So let's go to the next one again. So we are at I is equals to 1, and then basically I is equals to 1 is r. Now we say found is equals to 1 again. For j is equals to 0 we are assigning, and then now we say if str of I plus j, that is 1 plus 0, which is basically equal to r, is not equal to search of 0. So for j is equals to 0, right, which is not equal to I. So again we do the same thing. Now found is equals to 0 and then break. So it will keep on running till here, this blank space. Now let us consider we are here. Now this. So basically at 10th position, right? So I is equals till I is equals to 9, it will always say found is equals to 0 at the very end. That this count plus plus will not get increased, right? So I is equals to 10, it comes. Now we say, okay, found is equals to 1, no problem. Now we go here. Now what it is saying, if str of I plus j, now j value currently is 0, I plus j is 10, now which is basically equal to I, right? Now is not equal to str of j, which is basically I again, right? So obviously it is not equal to, so this condition is not getting satisfied. This is not implemented. This goes to, this is not implemented. Obviously now what will happen? this j plus plus will get implemented, right? Now what would happen is, now this I value is 10, j value becomes 1. Now what it is saying, str of I plus j, which is basically 11, which is s, right? So s is equals to 2 search of I, of j, which is currently 1 here, right? Which is again which is again s, right? So it is saying yes, okay, this condition is not satisfied, this will not again apply. What will happen is, found value remained 1, j plus plus has completed because it is still j is still 2 only, right? Now this will come here till found 1 1, and it will say okay, we found at least it one time. Now count plus plus value get increased to 1. Okay, so this is found again. Now again the same thing will happen to this is, which is basically at the 13th position. So I is equals to 13. Now again 13 plus, so again j is equals to 0, we are initializing. So it will say I 13, that is I is equals to 13. So 13 plus 0 is again this I. It will say this 0 is basically this I, so it is correct. It will iterate to the next step, j value will become 1. Now what will happen here is that it will say okay, the next one is s, so this will become s because 13 plus now new j value is 1, right? So this is s, this is s, so obviously again this will not get implemented. Finally found this j plus plus is still 1, this condition is not satisfied, it will break the loop and come here, it will say okay, found is again 1, correct, do count plus plus is equals to 2. So this will happen. Finally the whole code will run, the same thing will happen, this condition will get satisfied every time, found value will remain 0, this count will not get increased, this will only get increased twice here and here, right? Finally we print out the count value here, and then the final count value is 2. Now again this is a difficult question, I would have taken easier question. If you've not understood it, maybe you can watch the video again, maybe you can check the code that we've given. The code given on the various internet site will not work because this is again, one person copy pasted the code from internet, it did not work for all the test cases, it only worked for 2. So I am saying this code will work for all the test cases for you. Make sure that you learn this, right? So moving ahead further, this was one of the difficult question, this is one of the easier question that I am going to take, right? So basically what they are saying in this particular question is, you have to find the row. So this is a 2D or this is a 2D array that they are saying. So initially the input 3 comma 3 is being used. So if a 2D array a of n m, so you are assigning this 3, that is the rows and columns, the rows are 3 and the columns are 3. So initial first input will be this, and then you will input this array itself from the user or from the compiler AI itself. And then what you have to tell is, you have to first print the sum of each row. So 1 plus 2 plus 3 is basically 6, correct? Then again 4 plus 5, 9, 9 plus 6 is 15. Then again same thing for this, 16. So you have to print the sum of each of the row, and then finally you have to print which of the row is having the maximum sum. Correct. So now let's see how we can do this. Okay, so first we are going to take all the inputs. The inputs are going to be taken as, so initially row and column to understand which rows are there, I and j to iterate on the loop, temporary for a temporary variable to find the maximum, and then max is equals to 1 to assign, right? And then initially we initialize the matrix wherein we will be taking the input. This is for sum, printing the sum of it, printing the sum of each of the row. Then enter the number of rows. We are basically asking the user how many rows are there, and then we are asking the user how many columns are there. So basically these are the inputs that we are taking. Okay, so now taking those inputs in the matrices is important. So what we are doing for that, we are taking 2 for loops. So what will happen, the first for loop here will iterate upon the rows. So the first, let's say 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. This first for loop is iterating upon first here, second, and then third here. The second for loop is iterating upon the columns, this, this, this. So initially what will happen is when I is equals to 0 and j is equals to 0, first thing is entered. Now I will remain 0, j will increase to 1. So a of 0 comma 1, it will get entered here. Then a of 0 comma 2 will get entered here. Now let's say 3 is the max, right? So in that case, what will happen? A of 1, it will go iterate, and 0 it will iterate, right? So 1, 2, 3 was already entered. In the next one, 4, 5, 6. So a of 1 comma 0 will be 4. A of 1 comma 1 will be 5, and so on and so forth. So basic input of a matrix is very easy for you to understand, right? I would not want to waste too much time on this. Okay. So now on this particular loop, what we are doing is we are printing the sum of the rows, right? So what we are first doing is we are this for loop to iterate upon the rows, that is still here. This for loop is basically to iterate upon the columns here. And this sum of 0 we are essentially taking to find the sum of a particular row, right? So let's see with an example what happens. Initially I is equals to 0. Now again we come here, we assign sum is equals to 0. Now j is equals to 0. Now what we do, sum of I which is basically 0, sum of 0 is equals to sum of I, and that is 0 because initially we assigned it as 0, and sum of matrix is 0 comma 0, which is basically 1, right? Now we printed basically 1 0 plus or 0, or basically sum is equals to 0 plus 1. Now this has happened. Now what will happen? J plus plus will happen. It will come here, right? Now what would happen is sum is equals to sum already from the last step, basically from here is already 1. So 1 plus this 2, it will come here. So 1 plus 2. So it becomes 3 now. Now again same thing will happen. It will print for here, right? Then finally this all is getting printed, and then finally sum is basically 1 plus 2 plus 3 is 6. Now this whole loop is implemented because it can go only till j plus plus, which is basically it can go up to, it can only iterate in 0, 1, comma 2 here. Now finally this is getting stored in sum of 0. This is already stored. Then the same thing will happen, s of, that is sum of I, right? Now the I value is iterated to 1, right? The same thing will happen. This will get stored in sum of I. All this will get stored. Then same thing will happen. All this will get stored. Finally, we are running a for loop to print this sum of I. Now sum of I is basically 6 from all of these. Then here that is basically 4 plus 5, 9, then 16. And then 7 plus 8 is basically 15. 15 plus 9 is equals to 24. Right. Now basically we are iterating upon this and we are printing this. So 6 will get printed, 15 will get printed, 24 will get printed. Right. So very basic thing. Now this is the final code for printing out the sum. Now what I want you to do, I will not explain you. So this is basically very easy, and every one of you should know how to find the maximum element in a array, right? So basically this is an array, sum of 6, 15, 24. We are basically finding the sum using this particular code. Now this is a homework for all of you. I have already given the code in the there's a link in the description. On that link you can find this whole code, and I want you to basically focus upon this on your own and understand how this particular code is implemented, right? So this is